Hello, babies. Here's your Glastonbury. What's the name of this book again? Glastonbury Romance for the night. As he gazed at Mary, what John noticed now was that one of the ribbons that held up her slip across her shoulders was hanging loose and exposed. This minute and trifling disorder about the girl's person was more provocative to his senses than any drastic disarrays could have been. It seemed pathetic that a little thing such as this, so natural to her, and which she had refastened so many times with her needle on its return from the laundress, should be so disturbing to him and should excite in him such a triumph of possession. He pressed the palms of his hands against the windowsill and breathed intoxicating draughts of what seemed to him like melted moonlight. I have possessed her, he thought, far more completely by making love to her like I have than I ever could by going to the normal extreme. It is a soul I have taken, yes, her nerves, her veins, her fibers. I have possessed her so completely that henceforth she will be compelled to dwell within my soul. Wherever I go, she will go. Whatever I hate, she will hate. O great stones of Stonehenge, let me keep her, let me hold her, let me possess her, for years and years and years, as I do at this moment. For this is the secret of life. The natural reaction from the ecstasy of his came only too quickly. At an attempt he made to renew his love-making, Mary grew touchy and even cold. This drew away from each other, and some bitter words passed between them. John said to himself in his heart, "This is your girl. This girl will always be your girl. What is the use of quarreling with her?" But although his deeper nature knew that he was making a fool of himself, knew that he would regret it afterwards, his superficial nerves seemed to take delight in contending with her, and he now proceeded to carry on this tiresome dispute in a peevish, querulous, grievanced, complaining whine. "You know perfectly well, Mary, that you've been sulky for the last 3 weeks because I've been forced to put off our marriage." She really did flash out of him now with a more dangerous glint in her eyes than he had ever seen. "You won't find me sulky," she hissed out between her strong, large white teeth. "Ever again on that point, my friend." "You shouldn't take me up like that," he went on more querulously than ever, although in the lower levels of his nature something kept crying out to him, "Stop that, you fool! Stop that now!" It's just like a woman to go and bring up a thing like that and get furious about it. "You know perfectly well that what I say is true. Why can't you be generous and considerate to a person when she's worried like I am now with all I've got to think of?" "No," she said in a low, hard, cold voice. "I'm an idiot to beg a man to marry me when he doesn't think enough of our love to stop from calling me sulky when I'm sad at our being separated so long." "Mary, you are too absurd, and you know you're being unfair. I'm not accusing you. You take the words out of my mouth. I'm only saying that something's changed in you lately, so that you don't trust me like you used to. Tom was telling me only yesterday what you said about old Geared having got me under his—" "Stop there!" the girl cried, snatching her arms from the mantelpiece and clenching both her hands. "Stop just there. And don't bring other people into this. Oh, I never thought." Here her voice did really begin to break. "That we'd be bringing him into the quarrels with each other." "I'm not bringing Tom in," he cried, "and if I were, Tom's a friend of us both, isn't he? But of course that's what you women always do. You can never remain content till a man hasn't a friend left that he can talk to." Mary gave him a terrible glance at that. A glance that was as piercing as if she'd thrown a sharp knife at him. She then swung across the olive-colored couch and sat down there, desperately and wearily, resting her chin on the palms of her hands and her elbows on her knees. John got up from the arm of the leather armchair and, walking in silence to the window, closed it with a bang. He tapped a vicious tattoo with his knuckles upon the very sill that he had gripped so tightly, in a rapture of exultation, so short a time before. Little did John guess how far from the echoes of this angry quarrel her thoughts had wandered. Behind those staring and grey eyes, behind that forehead where the dark hair was generally parted so evenly, but where tonight a loose tress of it hung so disorderly. John did at any rate make a kind of movement, however, towards relieving the tension, for he walked across the room to where he had pushed their unwashed teapot in a hurry among the glasses on the shelf, and taking up his hand against her if she wouldn't help him to wash it before she had to go. "Why, what on earth's the time?" she asked with a start. "Oh, about a quarter," he began. "Who's that?" he cried, for heavy and rapid steps were now heard ascending the stairs. He had barely time to put down the teapot, and said barely time He had barely time to put down the teapot, and she barely time to rise from the couch and smooth back the errant lock from off her forehead when, with a couple of loud, easy knocks, such as those that a young collegian might give on a college's door on any familiar academic staircase, Tom Barter burst into the room. "Hello!" His tone expressed genuine surprise, not unmingled with a certain dismay at finding his two friends together at Maundy Thursday's evening. "Well, isn't this splendid, you two?" he growled out these words with a certain aplomb as he pulled off his overcoat and cloth cap. But when he added, "By God, I never guessed I'd kill two such birds with one stone," as he accepted a cigarette from Mary's case, for he did not shake hands with either of them, there was an unmistakable ring of the hollow, proprietary bonhomie of the manager of a factory about the sound of his words. Mary herself hurried to the fire and threw on some more coals. John, having made the visitor sit down in the leather armchair, began clattering with the trumbles of the shelf so that he could reach a bottled place behind them, and finally, putting 3 glasses on the table, as well as the bottle, cried out in an excited, high-pitched voice, "Let's all have a loving cup, that's the thing. Let's all have a loving cup, eh, cousin? Isn't that an inspiration?" Mary shot a quick glance at him. He had never called her cousin since that was the first day when they met at their grandfather's funeral. Was it a token of rejection? Were they to be only cousins henceforward? But John seemed to be seized with an almost unnatural excitement. He filled up 2 of the glasses with whiskey and cold water, but into the third, in place of the water, he poured milk from the milk jug on the table. "Here are 3 human beings," he cried wildly, while Barter watched him with a phlegmatic but indulgent smile, and then turned to Mary with a lift of one of his eyebrows, as much as to say, "We know him, don't we? He's not as crazy as anyone we'd suppose." "Here we are," John cried out. 3 human beings. What they call in France a situation à trois. 2 of us, in this à trois, must, the French think, be a law of nature, be plotting against the third. They need not consciously be doing this, you understand. They can't help doing it. So now you see, Cousin Mary, now you see, my dear Tom, why I've filled up one of these glasses with milk. The one with the milk is the weak one. The one with the milk is the one that the other 2, unconsciously, you understand, always unconsciously, are plotting against. I hope, by the way, that neither of you loads milk with whiskey. I rather like it myself. There are the 3 glasses. I'll shuffle them a bit, like this. Now, do you 2, keeping your eyes tight shut, choose a glass. And I'll take the one that's left over. Such was the hypnotism of John's mood, such was the affectionate indulgence towards him of his friends and his girl, that they obeyed him literally. They both ran their fingers blindly along the edge of the table till they encountered the glasses. Then blindly chose one and held the choice high up in the air. "You see? You see?" John cried triumphantly. They certainly did see, when they opened their eyes, that the glass left upon the table was the one with the milk in it. But they were both so convinced that John had arranged this result that all the portentousness was taken out of it. John swallowed his whiskey and milk in 2 or 3 gulps and put down the empty glass. "Come," he said, "if I'm the weak, idiotic fool that you two are plotting against, let me at least enjoy the voluptuousness of it." And he poured himself out an excessively stiff glass and tossed it off with the same impetuosity. It soon came to pass that Mary and he were sitting side by side on the olive-green couch, while their guest, with his great office trousers and striped blue socks, very much in evidence, was stretched out in the leather chair. "I say, but you keep this place pretty hot," said Mr. Barter brusquely. "Open the window, John, will you?" said Mary. "It's your coming in from outside, Tom, but it has been rather warm." There was an awkward pause while John went to the window. "It's too warm, I think, to have a fire on all day," said Mr. Barter. "I haven't got one at the office, as I've never had one in the winter in my lodging. Oh, yes, I did once, and that was when I had a visitor." As he said this, he smiled significantly at John to indicate that his visitor was none other than Mary. Mary knew from the back of Mr. Barter's head that he and John were exchanging a long look as the latter returned from opening the window. "They have talked about me," she thought. "They are always talking about me." She and her lover were now seated again side by side on the couch. "Your lamp is smoking," said Tom Barter. "Let it smoke," murmured John. But Barter rose from the armchair, went up to the red-shaded lamp, turned it low, and blowing violently down its funnel, extinguished it altogether. "You're too fond of red, you two," he blurted out rudely. "This room, as I've told John before, is like a damned Chelsea studio." "You're fairly bullying us tonight, Tom, aren't you?" said Mary. "He wants to show that our room is as much his as it is ours," said John. "And so it is, old chap, and so it is. What's ours is our old Tom's, isn't it, Mary?" "I'm not quite so sure that Tom wants it to be like that," said Mary slowly, as she got up from the couch and went to fetch a third candle. There were 2 burnings on the mantelpiece already. She lighted this third one and laid it on the crumb-strewn table. 3 persons, she thought, and 3 candle flames. There was a long pause. For the same thought had entered all their 3 heads simultaneously, the awkward, ticklish, embarrassing thought about Barter's leaving Philip. Barter said to himself, "Shall I tell them I've signed up today with Jerd? They both hate Philip, but after all, they are his cousins, and I'm playing him a dirty trick." Without putting his feelings into definite expression, his treachery to Philip remained in his nerves as an unpleasant taste. What Barter craved for at that minute was more humorously cynical talk to encourage him in his betrayal of his employer, or at least condone it. John said to himself, when is he going to confess he's come over to Jerd? It was a bit funny, him doing that at Gerd's word, when he wouldn't do it at mine. Did old Gerd bribe him a lot? Higher than he told me he was going to? Aye. But I'd like to see Philip's face when he hears about it. I'd like to see his face. But Mary thought, I hope old Tom hasn't decided to leave Philip. I don't believe this municipal factory will last. I'm afraid it's only a fad of Gerd's, and Gerd's cannot be mayor forever. Besides, it will mean that John and Tom will be closer than ever, and my life will never be happy till I've got John to myself. Their 3 pairs of eyes were turned simultaneously to the fire now, where at last there had appeared a solitary tongue of orange-colored flame, dancing up and down on the top of the black coals. And there fell upon them all, in that moment, that mysterious, paralyzing quiescence, full of inertia and of strange numbness, which sometimes seizes a group of human consciousness when conversation flags. It is an inertia made cubic, so to speak, by being shared. It was, at that second of time, as if the souls of these 3 East Anglicans had suddenly clung together and plunged down the great backward slide of biological evolution. They had become one vegetative soul, these three consciousnesses, weary of their troublesome misunderstandings. John was the first to shake himself clear of this inertia. He moved to the window and laid his hand on the sill. "Did you hear that?" he said. "That was a bird's cry from the banks of the Brew. I've never heard that cry before. Listen!" John leaned forward as he spoke and stared out through the oblong window space, on each side of which Mary's rose-colored curtains, looking as if the mist had dimmed them, wavered slightly in the night air. But the bird cry, if it were a bird cry, was not repeated. "It must have been a spirit," said Mary. "The spirit of one of those old lake village men," said John, "come to warn us three heathens not to fuss about ourselves about tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" questioned Barter, pulling his legs and yawning. "Why tomorrow?" And why indeed tomorrow? Well, we'll have to find out tomorrow. In our next exciting chapter in A Glastonbury Romance. Cheers.